Bridget, tremendous value, so much insight, so much clarity to what could be a confusing topic. I mean, taxes alone are confusing, let alone tax-free retirement income. But when you put it together and you go, we all have a license, we all are going to retire at some point, we're all going to get old and sick at some point, and this checks a lot of boxes. It's wonderful that we have access to that agents on here have access to it for themselves and for their families, and being totally transparent. I wasn't a great saver. So just like I tell my clients that, let's put a small bill in place, John, that then makes sure you've got some money here at the end. How about I put a small bill in place that then guarantees I've got tax-free retirement income when that day comes? Without further ado, the director of operations, is that your title? The president, the director, the senior account executive of the Simple Retirement Solutions division at Family First Life, Ms. Bridget Reimer, IUL and annuity specialist, and all-around fantastic person, is going to take it away today and give us another great training. They've been doing tremendously well, thousands of views on all of your training videos, hundreds of viewers on live, and we're just excited to continue to really educate people on taking their business not just from, hey, I sell term and whole life, to, hey, I'm actually a full holistic broker and I can offer a bunch of different products like IULs, like fixed index annuities, and I can really now level up my business to a level of where I truly desire it to go. So I'm so excited you've been able to give so much to us over these past few weeks and months, and I'll pass it over to you. Take it away.
I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I have access. Yep, I sure do. Get down here. All right. Can you see that there, Grady?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. Let me slideshow it and we'll just jump right in. So like I said, we're going to focus on the IUL today, 3 reasons why everyone should have one. And that's inclusive of me and you and agents listening, as well as our clients, our kids, our families. So this should be really beneficial. We've talked about in previous weeks with you guys, introduction to annuities and IULs, annuities and IUL 101. So we dived into, solving income and growth for annuities. And today we're going to focus on the 3 main benefits an IUL can bring you.
As you click to the next slide, I'm gonna weight the call by saying I have 6, and not I have one on myself, a big one, one on my wife, a big one, and then one on each of my 4 children, because I believe on them so much, to have products that, I'm not going to say anything else, but just I believe them. And if anyone has if my opinion holds any weight or water, that they're fantastic. So please pass it back to you.
Yeah, and Grady, that's true for a lot of you guys who have been in the business and are at that status, especially, when you've become in integrity partners and trying to protect your own family and build your own retirement, right? You've been self-employed this whole time. And so you need something to contribute to, and this is a great way to do that. And so we'll actually touch on that at the end, and you can share a little bit, maybe even about how yours are built out and the reasons that you purchased yours for you and your kids. And so first reason we're going to talk about today, and again, these 3 reasons that we're going to talk about today, you might have clients who need all 3 benefits. Okay. And that's the cool thing about an IUL, is an IUL can provide all 3, but sometimes you're going to meet the client where they're at to serve just one of these benefits, and that's okay. A lot of times the IUL, we focus on the tax-free retirement, and that is a fantastic benefit. We're going to get into that, but I don't want you to miss the other 2 opportunities for why we use the IUL. So I'm hoping at the end of today, you have a really good understanding of, the 3 major benefits, and how you shouldn't just write off a client if they're not in it for the tax-free retirement, and why that would be important. So first and foremost, we talk about, IULs being able to provide more death benefit. And when I mean more death benefit, I mean more permanent coverage, right? Because we all know that term is going to be our kind of cheapest, for bang for our buck. We can get $500,000 in coverage for 20 years, right? For pennies on the dollar. But this is whole life. So this is coverage that you lock in now and you have forever. So we think of it more as a permanent thing versus a term where that's going to expire. The truth is that most Americans don't have enough life insurance. And you guys already know that, because that's what you're out there doing as life insurance agents, right? You recognize recognize the need and the deficit that we have to our families should we pass. And so it's no secret that most Americans don't have enough life insurance. But how does that actually look? In a study done by LIMRA, if you take an average household earning of $60,000 to $70,000 a year, most people are going to earn about $3 million in their lifetime. Okay, based on like a single working family who maxes out at $70K a year. Only 54% of adults even have life insurance to begin with. So that's half of Americans who have no coverage, right? And out of that, 27% of this 54 are tied to employment. So it's tied to a policy offered through work, something that's going to terminate if you terminate as an employee, right? And so the IUL is a great way to put in permanent coverage that you own yourself, right? So even employees who have coverage through work provide a higher death benefit, right? So $3 million of earnings, if I mean, what am I, am I even halfway through my earning years? Probably not, right? I have a long ways to go. But if I were to die, thinking about leaving that much deficit to my family, that means we're underinsured, right? And most people are. So of those that are insured, we're underinsured, and the rest of us don't even have coverage. And so where does the IUL come into place? And the first thing I'll ask you is, how much coverage do you have as an agent, right? Like, Grady, we're talking about that. Like, there's a reason you got that policy, especially in the self-employed world, where you're not going to be passing on 401ks or other IRA type accounts to your beneficiaries if you die. So first, stop with yourself. How much coverage do you have as an agent? How much do you anticipate earning? We all know that at Family First Life, we have fantastic earning potential, right? We're probably well above that $60,000 to $70,000 a year household where they're going to earn $3 million in their lifetime. So even you should have more coverage than you probably have on the table. And adding an IUL to your portfolio is a great way to start doing that. The next reason, and this again is going to be one of the biggest talked about reasons, and I understand why, and we're going to spend some time on it because it is important and it's a super cool feature. It's the tax-free income that we're usually planning for, right? The supplement to retirement, especially in that self-employed world. So when properly structured, an IUL can provide that non-reportable income. And we talked about that a little bit in the IUL 101. How do you access that money and keep it tax-free? Do you do it through distributions or policy-free loans? And why is tax-free income even important? And that's what we're going to talk about here for just a few minutes. This is the U.S. national debt as of over a year ago, so it's probably even worse, right? But if you're looking at that number, you're correct. It's over $30 trillion. That's a lot of debt, right? And there's only one way out of that. There really is, and it's taxes. And we actually, I don't want to say lucky in America, but we have pretty low taxes, even though it might not seem like it, right? Historically, we're lower than we used to be years ago. And there's a lot of information and training out there on that, but we have to wrap our heads around the fact that taxes are going to increase. It's inevitable, and the rest of the world's already well above us on the tax rates, and so we're going to have to catch up. And if we're going to solve any of this debt, they're going to have to do it in taxes. So wouldn't providing a tax-free benefit to your clients, a tax-free income, right? Money that doesn't have to go to pay back the national debt, money that doesn't go toward your income, you can provide your clients that using an IUL. The other factor on taxes is we know that most Americans, their primary income source is going to be Social Security, right? That's just a fact. Most people are going to draw on Social Security, and that's going to be their primary income. The rest of it is traditionally found in qualified accounts like 401ks, IRAs. Those are all great vehicles to have, and I believe holistically you should have some money in all of it, right? I don't believe that you should. I'm a retired income certified professional. I don't believe you should have all your money in just tax-free, right? We need to diversify and have buckets of each, and there's appropriate times to spend down each. But most people don't know that when you start taking that money out, it's going to impact the taxation on your Social Security. So a cool thing about Social Security is you aren't taxed on it, right? You aren't taxed on it up to a certain point. So you get that income in retirement tax-free if you meet these parameters. Provisional tax brackets start to come in when you are drawing from other accounts. So if we start taking out too much money from a tax qualified vehicle like our 401k, then now we also have to pay tax on our Social Security, right? I know it seems like a kind of janky JIP system, but it is what it is. And this is the truth. I also have a National Social Security certificate holder certification. So I've studied this stuff, and people do not think about this. And so how quickly do you meet that? It's pretty low, guys. So a married filing joint, if you make under $32,000 additional dollars, and think about that, $32,000 to live off of is not very much money, right? So if you need to be drawing from your 401k, which most people are going to need to be drawing from their qualified funds, sure, as long as you don't take out over $32,000 a year to live off of, you can remain in that 0% tax bracket on the Social Security, right? Of course, the 401k will be taxed. But what about if you make over $44,000? That's the threshold, right? Most of us are going to need to replace that retirement income with income, right? 60 to 70,000 earning as a household now, I would argue, with how crazy the world has gone, is even pretty low. Most people are not able to live on that anymore. And it's not going to get any cheaper, right? In fact, we're going to talk about in a minute the increased expenses as we retire and head into, health problems and those ages of our life. And so 44,000 is the threshold. And now suddenly 85% of your Social Security gets taxed. That's a lot of money to then give away and have to figure out how to make up that deficit. So again, we're going to start talking about the IUL, because distributions and tax-free policy loans from that IUL do not count against this provisional tax income bracket, okay? You can take money out of those and not impact this whatsoever. So that's why I want you to know about this and why it's important to be tracking on that. So we're going to talk about an IUL in that regard, right? So if we were to solve our taxation concerns or issues, the best way to do that is through tax-free retirement income. And the IUL can be used for that. In this case, we have a 30-year-old, fairly healthy female putting in $500 a month, okay? And I didn't show all the way back to 30 because it has nothing to do with my point. Just know that she started paying on this at 30 years old, okay? So that's $6,000 a year if we do the math, right? At age 65, she's going to stop paying on the IUL because in theory, we want to be able to retire. So if we can't stop paying into our retirement at retirement, well, it's kind of a lost cause, right? No one keeps paying into their 401k as they're now starting to draw money from their 401k. So we want to design the IUL to kind of do the same thing, where we pay into it until we retire, and then we stop paying and we start accessing tax-free policy loans. So you see that here, that at age 65, that premium goes to zero because we want her to stop paying and start living off of it. And she starts taking out through policy loans, that's the loophole for getting it to be tax-free income, $108,000 a year. Do you remember how I said that threshold was 44,000 for a married couple? She would be well above and beyond this. All of her Social Security income would also be taxed, right? And she'd be drawing taxes on income of qualified accounts, right? So if she's taking out a 401k, she has to pay taxes on that. But this counts toward none of that. So she gets to start taking out this $108,000 a year. Her death benefit is still almost $1.1 million. And the idea here, and we talked about this in the IUL 101, is that the policy should sustain itself if it was done correctly. I'm not saying there's not bad IULs out there that have maybe been designed by people who don't know what they're doing, and the policy can implode, it can lapse. You stop paying, you don't have enough account value, it's not earning enough interest, but it's expected to pay the policy, you're going to have an explosion, right? So let us help you and make sure you know how you're designing these. And if we do it right, it should illustrate like this, right? It should serve this purpose. So she has that $1.1 million death benefit while she starts taking out loans. Remember, she stopped paying. So the total she ever put into this policy, and this number is crazy, and great, if you were to show yours are probably, you guys started yours forever ago. This is probably incredible, right? $216,000. That was her investment over a 35-year period. In 2 years, she's already taken out all that premium, right? And the policy is still building, growing, and sustaining itself. So if we fast forward here, just to show you like, okay, what's this look like long-term? Like, how does that policy end at age 70? Let's fast forward to age 90, right? Which is well above the average life expectancy for humans. Again, we never paid another premium in. We're not paying the loans back. The policy's paying all of that and settling it all internally. She's now taken out that $108,000 a year for that entire time. So 65 to now age 90 for a total of $2.6 million. And she still has a death benefit left, right? Like those are real numbers. These are pretty incredible products. And I'll remind you, my point here with this being a tax-free income is that $2.6 million was completely tax-free. She didn't pay on it. It didn't count against her Social Security where she had to pay taxes on her Social Security. So hopefully we're minimizing our client's tax burden by only getting the taxable bucket out of their qualified accounts, like their 401ks and their IRAs. So that's the number 2 benefit for why we would use an IUL. and arguably definitely the best seller, right? That's the main reason people are selling these. These other 2 points, like I said, were just so you don't miss opportunities on clients that you're like, well, they're already 65, they can't contribute, right? Which leads me to my next and third final reason that everybody should have an IUL. And that's because it can solve for long-term care alternatives, okay? So, and that's going to be arguably one of the most difficult challenges to prepare for as a human. I know firsthand, my uncle actually was diagnosed with early onset dementia at the age of like 55. And I cared for him in my home. He had no long-term care, ended up having to go through the state to get coverage. Like, it is a difficult challenge. And you're going to be stunned at the amount of us that are actually going to have to face any long-term care needs. So, next study is that longtermcare.gov reports that 70% of us who reach the age of 65, which is well below the average life expectancy, are going to require some sort of long-term care. So it's like the elephant in the room that we don't want to talk about because we don't want to think about getting sick. We don't want to think about being the 50-year-old with dementia. But the reality is there's a very high chance that it happens to us, right? If we live to 65, 70% of us are going to need some sort. I'm not saying, we're all going to get dementia, but we're going to need some sort of long-term care assistance, whether that's our ADLs being compromised, right, to daily living activities. If we can't bathe ourselves, feed ourselves, be able to move around. Maybe it is a serious illness like dementia, right? But 70% of us, women on average, need it for about 3.7 years. Men, a little lower. We're just healthier, I guess, and more awesome. So we live longer, maybe. But
True.
men, 2.2 years, right? So a little bit less there. And 20% of those people who end up needing care are going to need it for longer than 5 years. And why is this important? Because most of us and most of our clients don't have a long-term care plan. And there's reasons for that, right? How likely is it and how does it impact our retirement and our well-being? This is the what they call the retirement smile. Okay, this was done by Dr. Blanchett from the American Institute of Finance in Philadelphia. And the idea was that we're going to spend more when we retire, then it's going to dip down, and then it's going to go back up. What are the reasons for that? When you retire, let's imagine being 65 and we're retiring. We're excited to go out and start living life, right? We want to travel. We want to visit the grandkids. We want to take vacations. So we're going to live it up of our money doing that while we're healthy, able to get around, equipped, ready to travel. And then it's going to slow down because we slow down as much as we don't want to face it. I mean, I'm already feeling the age sometimes, like I get on the floor to play with my kids and it kind of hurts to get back up. Well, that gets worse is what I hear. So we start moving slower. We can't get around as much. Traveling is hard, right? So we slow down our spending. But then what causes the spike back up is inevitably the healthcare, the need for long-term care. We get sick, we have more health issues, there's more things, and long-term care is expensive. I don't know if you've ever looked into it, and I didn't throw those stats in this study, but it is a very expensive solution. So what do we do to help protect our clients from that swing in the end of the retirement smile where they're going to be spending more money? This just shows you our healthcare budget over time, right? The healthcare is that gray section there. Our need for it at the beginning of retirement is very small. We're still fairly healthy. And then see how that grows and basically ends up taking over the majority of our budget as an older person. That's, 30, 39 years into retirement. So we're talking, if we retire age 65, fast forward 20 years, it's 85. And you see that drastically grow the longer we live. So how do we plan for that? And who qualifies? So the idea here is that most IULs have what are called living benefits, which is a super neat feature. You're able to access the death benefit while you're still alive and use it as a living benefit. Yes, it depletes the death benefit, right? So if you're using this bucket, if you're using the IUL for the long-term care need, have a different plan for your final expenses, right? This is where, I tell people this is not IULs replace the need for final expense or replace the need for term insurance. It's a supplement. There's purposes for both buckets. And so if our plan and if our client's goal is to use this policy for the living benefits, make sure you have another plan. Okay, that's my tangent. make sure you have that final expense policy in place too, to pay out the death benefit for the final expenses. Because if we're using the living benefits for long-term care, chances are we're going to go ahead and deplete that death benefit. But that's the reason we put it in place. So what qualifies? What things can you actually trigger those living benefits on? You have critical illness and terminal illness are the two things. You can read through those, right? Critical illness, cancer, heart attack, strokes, tumors, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all of those will trigger it. But then terminal illnesses will also trigger that. So advanced cancer, dementia, pulmonary disease, heart disease, liver disease, right? There's so many that fall, and this is just a snapshot of things that fall into those two categories, which would trigger a qualifying event for that client to be able to start actually taking withdrawals against their own death benefit while they're still living and help create a long-term care alternative. Why not just long-term care insurance, right? That's the question. Well, why wouldn't we just purchase long-term care insurance? There's some pros and cons to it. I'm not saying don't do it. If you get on the bus early, there can be some major benefits to that, right? What are the pros of actual long-term care insurance? There's tax benefits. There's higher multiple payouts, right? So you can possibly get reimbursed for more. Sometimes there's like a tripler on that. You put in, $30,000 and it builds over time. Now at age 85, you might get a triple benefit. So you could get up to, $90,000 of that money. So there can be higher multiple payouts in accessing living benefits. What are some of the cons though? It's very expensive, right? It's very expensive. Not everybody can qualify. And I know a lot of the clients that we sit with can't qualify for long-term care insurance, right? They're not healthy enough. Imagine that. You have to be healthy to get the long-term care insurance in place to help you when you're unhealthy. So if you're already unhealthy, then it's very expensive and very hard to qualify. You might not use it. That's a big one. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? That's a long-term care insurance is not something that you can cash out or keep or pass down or use as a death benefit, where the IUL can. If you don't use it, you still get the benefit paid out to someone. So that's a big con, might not be not able to use it. Reimbursement only. A lot of long-term care programs are reimbursement only. And what I mean by that is you still have to have the money to pay for the care up front. Then the company comes in and reimburses you. But what happens if you don't have the money up front to pay for it, right? You have to be able to foot the bill first and get reimbursement only. So there's lots of pros and cons. There is a place for long-term care insurance. Hear me on that. I'm not speaking against it. I'm talking to the clients that we have who will not have it and will not be able to qualify for it. What can we do to solve that need and help them with that? You often then run into the people who say, well, I'm self-insured, right? And there is a way to self-insure. Again, this isn't saying that people aren't self-insured, but what most people don't realize or think about in the moment is the emotional ties that come to making that decision later, okay? So here's just some examples of, people who can claim to be self-insured. So they have assets, right? That's what being self-insured means. You have plenty of assets to pay for whatever you might need to cover those things down the road. I don't need insurance. I don't need to worry about it because I'm self-insured. I have plenty of assets. So you have Amazon stock, you have a collector car, maybe you have a condo on a beach, a boat, a second home, maybe you just have your cash, right? People usually have this stuff earmarked for something, right? So Amazon stock, for example, you bought in when it was, $5 a stock and now it's 500. Who wants to sell that off, right? Who wants to sell that and deal with the tax burdens at that hard, difficult time in our life of long-term care needs? Or what about the car that we promised we would pass down to our firstborn grandchild, right? Well, now what if we need to sell the car to pay for that long-term care insurance, or the condo, or even the house, right? Where are you going to live? Where are you going to go? And even emergency cash is funny. The psychology behind having emergency cash, I have this cash stockpiled for this. Psychologically, we still don't like to dig into that emergency cash, right? Well, that's what it's there for. It doesn't matter. When it comes time to pull that trigger, we don't like the idea of it not being there. So even that, if it's not built out into multiple different buckets, can be a really hard trigger to pull. And then, God forbid, you're actually in a position like my uncle who need long-term care insurance, but doesn't now have the mental faculties to make that decision himself. So now you're depending on a spouse or a child or someone else to know what you wanted them to do with the money, to know which trigger to pull first, and then how fast can you even cash it out? If you have to put a house on the market, how fast are you going to get that cash out to pay for that long-term care insurance? I've watched it happen firsthand. Those needs come dang quick, and you're not prepared for them. And a lot of times you don't have the time to think about and wait for the money to free up to pay for the needs of that loved one who's going to need that long-term care insurance. So what do we do to solve the emotional ties to all of this and take the weight off of the decisions that other people are inevitably going to have to make for you? We purchase insurance, right? Insurance that has a direct purpose and service for our clients. There's no emotional tie to that. You paid the premiums to do its job. So when it comes time to access that living benefit, it's an easy decision. It's an easy slot in because that's what we earmarked it for. So it can be a fantastic alternative to long-term care for those clients who don't have access to it or didn't put it in place early enough in life. So I want to show you guys real quickly what an IUL looks like for that. Because we don't talk about this one a lot. We don't talk about using it as a true true death benefit or the living benefits. So in this example, we have a client age 68, so much older than the 30-year-old saving for retirement. To get $100,000, she had to put in $363 a month, okay, for a $100,000 death benefit. She pays in, and let's say by the age of, average life expectancy is 87, 88. Well, let's say age 83, she goes into long-term care facility or has in-home care assistance that she needs. She can trigger that death benefit of $100,000 and start taking payouts against it. And yes, in this case, you notice we didn't stop paying premiums because at age 68, you're going to have to pay into the policy. So don't set those expectations wrong, right? The 30-year-old is the one we hope to be able to stop paying because we had enough runway. But at age 68, you're going to probably have to pay for the policy as a permanent whole life policy till the day you die. But if you fast forward there to age 88, she's still paying in the premium. She has still put in less than that death benefit is worth, and she can access that whole death benefit, okay? So think of it as like a savings account for long-term care, right? Alternatives, needing to access the death benefit. But the cool part is, if she doesn't use it, unlike long-term care insurance, and most 68-year-olds cannot go get a long-term care insurance policy, at least the benefit still gets paid out to her family. Her money gets returned, right? Because you see there that the premium never totaled the $100,000. Now, I get it. Well, what if she lives too long? That's kind of the risk we take with life insurance, right? That might start going up. Maybe if she lives to 95, we'll catch up there. But that's not the case for most clients. And so we're trying to solve the need for most clients and meet the client where they're at. We've talked about this once before. So that's the three. I'll stop there for just a brief moment. Those are the three main reasons, right? More death benefit, right? Long-term care alternative, the popular one, which is tax-free retirement. Sometimes those policies are going to meet all those needs in one, especially if we have a young enough client who's capitalizing on that opportunity now. I threw this slide back in there because after we've heard all those needs, I talked about this in our IUL 101, who makes a good IUL client. I hope by going through those 3 points, you realized a lot of people, most people, right? So just to run through some of those again to keep them front of mind for you, monthly premiums versus lump sums, people who don't have a lump sum but want to pay into something, looking for more whole life coverage than final expense policies can allow. This is that more boosted death benefit I was talking about. That is whole life, permanent, not term. Long-term care alternatives. So I talked about that before. So accessing those living benefits, healthy clients on our 30-year-old side, younger clients for the 30-year-old side. That's for our tax-free retirement planning bucket. Keep in mind, it is an IUL, right? It's whole life. So yes, a super, super sick person is probably not going to qualify for an IUL, but there's a lot of older clients who are still in good health that would qualify for an IUL. Self-employed individuals like yourselves, small business owners who need to protect against key personnel and policies there. Self-insuring, that benefit we just talked about, that's what I was referring to when we initially went over this presentation. You can't be convinced of insurance otherwise, but that combo appeals, right? Earmarking that bucket, taking the emotion out of those self-insured decisions. Low risk tolerance individuals, I'll retouch on that. People who want to pay into something, but they just can't even stomach the market. It doesn't matter if they're 30 and they know they should be investing in the market. They can't do it. We're not going to change their mind. So put them in a safe alternative like this. And then how do we prospect, right? Because I feel like that's a big one. And this is not, hear me on this. I'm not saying prospecting by go knock down the door of your neighbors, call through all your families and friends. We're not in that business, right? But there's nothing wrong with talking about what we do for a living. And you'd be amazed at the opportunities you uncover if you just talked about it. And I'll circle back to point one in a second. But talking about what you do, when your friends ask, what do you do? When your family asks, what do you tell them you're just a life insurance agent? Or do you tell them that you can help create retirement supplement options or secure benefits for long-term care alternatives? Do you talk about those things, or do you just leave it basic at life insurance where that's what they're going to think? That's the end all be all, right? Do you talk to your family about that, and not, like I said, calling through your friends list, but just talking about what you do as a living? Do you post it on social media? Do you market that way? Do you use our insurance strip platform, which allows us to do the marketing for you, and you sign up for the categories you want to educate your social media and email people on, and we send out the content for you. We find the articles that are relevant to your friends groups, and it posts to your social media automatically. Are you doing those things? Because a lot of times I feel like we're not. We're saying, oh, we sell life insurance, and people don't translate the many benefits that I mean when I say I sell life insurance, right? I'll tell you guys, like, honestly, every single annuity I've ever written is because I've told people what I do. It's my, the girl doing my nails at the salon. Oh, so what do you do for a living, right? Well, I teach about annuities. I can offer annuities, provide retirement protection, right? Well, what does that mean, right? And then she sends me her 5 friends, and that's it. All I had to do was talk about what I did for a living. I wasn't trying to sell them on anything, right? Family, friends, the same exact way. So know what you can offer, know what's in your tool belt, and talk about it. Right? Let's prospect to our warm market, because we believe that everybody should have one. I'll circle back to that first point. Get an IUL on yourself so that you can personally speak to the power of it. Just like Grady said at the beginning of the call, he has 6. Why? Because he believes in them, right? So if you aren't a believer and you don't want to go represent something that you don't believe in, get one on yourself or your wife or your husband or your kids, right? Think about the benefits it can offer all of them so that you can personally speak to the power of it. Because I feel like that holds a lot more weight when you're presenting one to a client. Well, I have one myself, right? If you were willing to put one on yourself, your client can then buy into that as well. And same thing for annuities when you get there. When you get to the point of having lump sums and being able to invest in the annuities, I encourage the same thing on that front. I'll circle back to the last point now because I kind of went out of order there. Generating leads. There's a lot of buzz about that on social media, either organic through just posting like I'm talking about, or through using kind of lead capture forms. There's so many ways to do it. We've done multiple webinars on this, and a lot of times I'll have someone who's doing it come on and speak to you guys. We just didn't have time to arrange that today, but they do it through TikTok duos, stories, posts, Instagram stories, Facebook reels, right? Things like that. There's so much content out there. You don't even have to be the creator of it. I am not a social media expert. I try to stay off social media, if we're being honest. So I'm not the best person to talk to about it. But from what I understand, TikTok duos, you find someone who's saying what you want to say, and you record yourself next to them and let them do the talking. You just agree with it. I mean, it's that simple. And people are actually running their whole business on prospecting this way. Why? Because the IUL and the annuity front, these simplified retirement solutions world gives you something to talk about. There's meat to this, right? It gets people excited about planning for their future, not just thinking about the here and now. The sad truth is most of us aren't thinking about, well, what if I died today? We're thinking about, well, when I retire in 30 years, I need a plan, right? Everybody's planning for that. So you have an easier sell, I feel like, going into this IUL prospecting, annuity marketing, than convincing that 30-year-old that they need life insurance just in case they die right now. Because most of us don't think that's going to happen, right? I mean, I'm here to tell you that does, but you convince them of that. I hope you are, because that's your job, is to convince them of the need and how often that actually happens. But there's so many ways we can prospect to warm market, strangers, getting post boost on social media. If you guys are interested in that webinar, we've done some with a couple different guys in FFL who are extremely successful at creating content, posting it, and run their entire business just off of those leads that come in. I'm happy to share that with you and your team, Grady. I can send over that webinar that you guys can have a copy of. But there is, if you're not at least digging into it and seeing if it's a fit for you, you're missing something. So I encourage you to just take a look and see if something you can easily implement in your own business and prospect for yourself, and the power and benefits of the IUL. That is it I have for you today. Is everyone should have an IUL, you, your clients, everybody included. If you guys need any case scenarios, things ran, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can look at all the companies we have access to and really help build a proposal that is going to last the lifetime, right? So email us always info@fflams.com and let us know how we can help.